Later, Londonderry became part of the 6 counties of Northern Ireland, following the partition of Ireland by the British government in 1921. By the late 1960s, anger and resentment in the Catholic community spilled onto the streets. The stairway that descends to Catholic, nationalist, Republican Derry. This working-class neighbourhood, known as the Bogside, experienced deprivation and high unemployment. As the civil rights movement grew, people took to the streets. The British Army was deployed, and calamity engulfed the city on Bloody Sunday. In January 1972, I was 18 and in the United States on an exchange program which involved me going into schools and talking to students my age about my country, which was fine until on the 30th of that month, the British Army shot dead 13 unarmed demonstrators here in the Bogside. Try explaining that to young Americans, many of whom had Irish descent. I would have done better, as David Cameron did as Prime Minister in 2010, simply to have hung my head and apologised for Britain. A collection of 12 street murals, known as the People's Gallery, capture the violence of that fateful Sunday. Painted over 14 years, starting in the mid-1990s, they are the work of 3 men known as the Bogside Artists. I'm meeting 2 of them, Kevin Hassan and Tom Kelly. Kevin, tell me about this mural.
Well, this mural is a representation of an event that happened here in 1969, the Battle of the Bogside. It lasted for 3 days and it led eventually to the introduction of the British Army onto the streets. It's a young kid. He's wearing a Second World War gas mask. When the police began using the CS gas, it was the first time within the UK. And he's famously holding a petrol bomb, which was how the people stopped the police here.
Tom, why did you artists want to paint these murals?
We wanted to tell the story of a community going through 35 years of conflict. And very simply put, it's really about what people do to each other. This was warfare. This was blood and guts. This was children dying on the streets. These were neighbours and friends of ours.
I was 11 years old when it began in 1969. So our lives, my life, growing up on the streets here, throwing stones at the soldiers, riots every day, it was a life of conflict.
Tom, the Bogside was under the control of the IRA for a long period, and a lot of people found that control arbitrary and violent. Do you depict any of that at all?
There is a depiction of a young boy that was actually killed by an IRA bomb right here in the Bogside. And the murals, they're not waving any flags for anyone, but what it is saying is, look, here's our story. Without the balaclava mass and the shooting over of coffins and all of those cliches.
Another striking image, entitled The Death of Innocence, features a young schoolgirl. Kevin, tell me about this mural.
The girl is Annette McGavigan. She was a 14-year-old child who was shot dead in 1971 by the army. She was symbolically the 100th victim of the conflict here, and there's so many children that have died here in this conflict, both Protestant, Catholic, so we used Annette to represent all of the children.
Did you know her?
Yeah, Annette was actually my cousin, and just recently it was the 50th anniversary of Annette's death, and we held a humble ceremony here.
Tom, your murals depict suffering at a time of warfare. Do they perpetuate the conflict, or do they add to peace?
So I think they play a major part in the peace process. There is actually an underlying spiritual Christian message that runs right through all 12 of these, and it's a message of hope. It's saying, yes, we went through this, but it doesn't end